Hello everyone, my name is Jocelyn, you may call me Joy, and in this video I'm going to talk about pronouns. Take a look around. The graveyard, full of gravestones that memorialize people's names, important dates. Trans people often struggle to be accepted by our chosen names and pronouns in life, let alone in death. And I, of course, firmly believe that we do deserve that respect for our own identities beyond our own passing. People often put pronouns in their bios online. What if someday we put pronouns on the gravestones? Wouldn't that be nice? There is something of a meme going around about people who say things about archaeologists in 1,000 years digging up the bones of people who are trans, and they will determine that person's biological sex through chromosomal testing, and that essentially trans people's identities are somehow invalidated by that. And to those people I would say, first of all, stop being weird about bones. We trans people are fully aware about our biology. It doesn't make it any more or less satisfying or satisfactory of an answer to us living in the here and now that we have to struggle with gender identity and dysphoria. And I think all of us that choose the path of transition choose to do so because our happiness in life is more important to us than our biology, let alone our biology 1,000 years from now. And also, how many times have there been graves that have been discovered of people of a certain gender with artifacts belonging to what was thought to be prescribed to the opposite gender? Were those people trans? We may never know. But the fact is, it is possible. I want to say hello to all the new people who have joined me on this YouTube journey as of late. I've noticed the numbers increasing, and that does make me happy. And I do promise that this video will actually be more light-hearted and a bit more fun than some of the stuff that I've put out lately. So, let's all take a deep cleansing breath. Relax. Let's begin. And strap on for good vibes. If you know, you know. Let's get into answering all of your user questions about pronouns. From grammar basics to societal impact. And don't worry, stay with me here on this one. Even if you do know how to use pronouns correctly, I promise it'll be worthwhile. So, what are pronouns? Any good dictionary will tell you that pronouns are simply a classification of words. That's all they are. There's nothing scary. There's no commie woke agenda coming at you just for saying the word pronouns. A pronoun is a part of speech that is used to replace a noun in a sentence, which is usually an antecedent, i.e. something that has already been mentioned, but it can also be a precedent, something that is about to be mentioned, or something that is less concrete in its application. Some examples. The orange is round, it is also juicy. I'm using a pronoun it to replace the noun orange in the second sentence because you already understand what I am talking about, therefore I can replace the word orange with it. Okay? This is something that everyone in primary school should learn. Also, as point of use, pronouns replace not just the noun but also the article oftentimes. So you say the orange is round, it is also juicy, rather than the orange is round, the it is also juicy. You don't add the article when you are replacing a noun with a pronoun, which is why my inner grammarian cringes every time someone refers to someone as a he or a she or a they. Ugh. A more abstract descriptor of how to use a pronoun would be, for example, in the sentence, "It is raining." You know that it refers to the weather, even without any explicit mention of the word weather. Okay, on top of that layer of usage, personal pronouns are a signifier of gender. And what is gender but an association between the qualities of a biological sex and the typically historical expectations of behaviour, the aspect of one's personality, as well as the social construct and interactivity that one has with other people, based on those delineated definitions, i.e. masculinity, femininity, and androgyny, to name a few. It is a state of mind. It is, for most people, just what fits well in terms of personality and presentation, societal roles, and psychology. For more information where I define gender using a lot of squiggly lines, check out this video here. Okay, so what does this have to do with pronouns? Well, pronouns have grammatical gender baked into them, at least in the third person singular when we talk about English. For more information about usage of pronouns beyond English and how they relate to gender, check out this video that I made quite some time ago. The allegiance between pronouns and gender is such that, generally speaking, when we refer to someone as he, we mean someone who is a male, masculine, man or boy, and when we use she, we are talking about someone who is female, feminine, woman or girl. And of course, non-binary people, who do exist, by the way, who's got two thumbs and is too fabulous for just one gender. Most often, non-binary people will prefer to be referred to with they/them pronouns, but of course, this doesn't apply to everyone. Everyone is an individual. Some people use other pronouns, and that's what we get into now. So I am non-binary, and I would kindly ask you to please use they/them when referring to me. Not only is it incorrect to call me a man or a woman, but also that those things just don't fit. Like, they've never properly fit with my sense of identity of self. I have always had a kind of in-the-middle attitude towards how I see myself in that regard. Obviously, I present feminine, but I am, deep down, not a woman nor a man. So I'm partway through editing this video, and I was reminded recently, since I filmed this part, of all those so-called rationalist, atheist, prominent skeptics who loved to champion themselves as being rational, who have since gone on to spread some pretty anti-trans narratives and views. Say, for example, Ricky Gervais, who can't stop reusing that one joke from 2016. Richard Dawkins, who has gone full turf. And then there was that one guy who single-handedly broke the online atheist community in half. Wonder what happened to that guy. Nope, not touching that one. I'm out. No. Anyway, to those people who do consider themselves skeptics, yet still are earnestly curious about trans people, who ask the question, well, how do you know you're trans? I ask them the same question in reverse. How do you know you're cis? How do you know you're human? How do you know you're alive? How do you define a woman? How do you define a chair, a horse, beauty? This is considered probably the pinnacle of philosophical, epistemological questions of all time, i.e., how do you know what you know? And I'm not too proud to admit that how we know is essentially how you know that you're not a brain in a jar. We can be as 99.9% certain on that as you could. And if you need any more convincing, no one considers what their own gender is more than trans people. No one thinks more in depth about the topic of gender. No one does more research, more thinking, more doubting than trans people. I'd say it's safe to say we've come to a pretty solid conclusion. And for those people who are trying to make that argument in bad faith, I will say the following. Fuck off. I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not trying to justify my own existence to people who don't like the answers I'm prepared to give. So, fuck them. Anyway, back to the rest of the video. Turning my attention briefly to the anti-woke squad headed by perpetual purveyor of word salad, Jordan B. Peterson, they would say that me introducing myself with my pronouns is something akin to compelled speech. As if I somehow have you over a barrel about how to compel your speech, about controlling the things you say, as if trans people in general had that much power. Yeah, baby. Say my pronouns. Who's your gender-neutral parent? To be clear, when people argue, when people like this argue, but my freedom of speech, this is not a particularly compelling or valid argument. You may have seen someone on the left, a trans individual or a trans ally, forcibly saying something along the lines of this.
My pronouns aren't preferred, they are mandatory.
What it might sound like is that I or anyone else is forcing you to say words that you don't like or agree with. That's not the case. If you aren't going to be respectful of someone's pronouns, when they inform you of what those are, then just don't bother talking to that person at all. If you aren't going to respect someone's pronouns, by the transitive properties for algebra, what that means is you're not going to be respectful of that person's identity. You'll be much happier not having to address the trans weirdos, and we'll be much happier without you in our lives as well. It's kind of a win-win situation. You go live off in bigot land, and we'll stay here in Niceville. Okay? Great. But what about the truth? Well, you see, according to every psychology, sociology, and anthropology study ever, apart from like one, trans people are valid. vaginal desiccant Ben Shapiro, who insists that pronouns are based on the biological facts of a person's being, is ignoring certain biological facts about people's beings, for starters, because trans people, often will change their biology, or even if they don't, there's still a biological factor going on in the brain that makes us align with a gender that is different from the one that we were assigned at birth. But it's all just an excuse to disrespect trans people and non-binary people. There's no such thing as biological pronouns.
Doctor, the baby, it's French.
Ben Shapiro himself has argued that a person can change their name but not their pronouns, and he did this when talking about Laverne Cox. When he says she can't change her pronouns, what he means is she can't change her identity, her biology, which, she can, because she did. The real meaning behind that sentence is a person cannot be trans. He disagrees with the very concept of a person being trans, which, okay, a lot of people do, and they are wrong. And of course, this is just a surface level interpretation and understanding of what it means to be trans. Changing one's presentation and biology through transition is it's actually a shame that that's the most well-known part, that trans people choose to transition should they need to, whereas the most important part is the reason why we do it. Because psychologically there is this mismatch between part of a person's biology and their identity. The understanding there being that that is not inherently a bad thing. And the pronouns arguments are always just a proxy for trans rights arguments. Thinking about it, earlier this year, someone who I'd never heard of, a YouTube game reviewer known as Heels vs. Babyface, what a name, went on a now infamous rant about how woke pronouns have invaded his beloved video games. Someone better not show him this, an example of pronouns in the title of a game that was around since before the invention of video games. Pronouns have been around since before TV, since before Shakespeare, since before the Bible even. Did you know that the Bible has pronouns in it? #WokeBible. I'm bringing this up because the crux of his argument essentially is that pronouns are somehow new and woke, which they are not. So frequently, non-binary people such as myself will ask to be referred to using they or them pronouns, because use of they as a singular pronoun has been around for a very, very long time, since before Shakespeare. And to be clear, this is as a gender-neutral, singular, third-person option when it comes to pronouns. For example, there's not a man I meet but doth salute me as if I were their well-acquainted friend. Comedy of Errors, Act 4, Scene 3, 1594. Arise, one knocks. Hark how they knock. Romeo and Juliet, Act 3, Scene 3, 1599. 'Tis meet that some more audience than a mother, since nature makes them partial, should hear the speech. Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 3, 1600, 1602 approximately. So please, feel free, if you must, to refuse to use they as a singular, gender-neutral option, but you're kind of ignoring the whole history of English at that point. Some people do wonder and get confused about how to use they as a singular. Well, it's the same word with the same rules as when you would use it as a plural. You conjugate the verb as you would normally. You say, they are here, as opposed to they is here. And also, Kate, this part is for you specifically. The word they is not in any way connected to the word thy. Thy is the possessive adjective of the second person singular archaic form thou, which is not connected to they in any way, because they is the third person, both singular and plural pronouns. And to those people who are saying, well, it's not grammatically correct. Again, ignoring history, we've seen the example of a plural pronoun replacing a singular pronoun in common usage all the time. When it comes to our second person pronouns, the word you. Not many people that use the word thou in these days anyway. Certainly even fewer people who manage to use it correctly with the correct conjugation of the verb. It's an st ending. Thou speakst, thou playst. I give the ring to thee. Because thee in that context is the object pronoun, not the subject of the verb. Look, if you don't know verbs by now, I can't help you. All this is to say that I've really gone off topic. So let's head back towards non-binary people, shall we? There are some of us who have taken to using it, its as the pronoun of choice, which I understand the reluctance to use it when referring to a person, because to me, it feels dehumanizing, disrespectful, and demeaning. But here's the important point. It's not about how I feel. It's about how that person feels. If that is what someone wants and is comfortable with, then it is okay to call that person it. I also understand the reluctance to using non-standard pronouns, otherwise known as neo-pronouns, the ones that have been invented to kind of solve the problem of not having a dedicated gender-neutral singular third-person pronoun. People have been trying for over 2 centuries to construct something usable. However, inventing new pronouns is one thing. Making them stick is something quite different. The reason we hear much more nowadays about people who go by zer and z is because of the widespread use of the internet. Like, this sort of communication could not have happened 200 years ago. It's also far more difficult to get a pronoun to stick instead of a noun such as internet or a verb such as twerking. These new concepts require new labels, whereas talking about people in third person is a concept that's been around for far longer than the English language itself. And I get it. It may feel wrong or odd to do so, to use a pronoun that is not familiar or non-standard in some way, but that's only because we've been conditioned to categorize things in the way that we have, i.e. to think in terms of only binary. My goodness, even my own childhood in the 90s, I was taught that she and he for singular and they for plural only, which turns out my teachers were kind of wrong because we found the historical Shakespearean examples that disprove that. But it's okay, I forgive those teachers. It's important to reflect and understand when you may have been wrong in the past. Hey everyone, let's talk celebrities. So in this section I would really like to talk about 3 trans and non-binary celebrities in particular. Sam Smith, Demi Lovato, and Elliot Page. The former two have actually collaborated together, which is something that I didn't even know until a couple of months ago. Sam Smith adopted the usage of they/them pronouns back in September 2019 to reflect their gender, as they were also coming out as non-binary at the time. Something that they have been very open about sharing their struggles with for the past 30 years. And of course dealing with the world's perception, hate and bigotry since coming out. Sam Smith admits backlash to coming out as non-binary has been a struggle. People are still so unsupportive of gender non-conforming people and trans people all around the world, they said. Smith has also repeatedly been misgendered by members of the press, by interviewers, reporters, TV presenters, a lot of the time seemingly not maliciously, but still they were criticised by their audiences for getting Smith's pronouns wrong, all except Piers Morgan, who will not apologise for anything because he is a right-wing troll and needn't take up any more of our precious time. When it happens to someone who is so famously out and loudly proud about who they are and what language they would like people to use about them, that it's understandable that they would get tired, angry at being misgendered. Demi Lovato adopted the use of they/them pronouns in May 2021 to reflect their coming out as non-binary as well. But just over a year later, they publicly reverted back to using she/her pronouns. Not so much as a reflection of their newfound femininity, although that reportedly was a part of it, but because they were just tired of having to explain themselves like again and again, which I can thoroughly understand. It's easy to feel deflated after making this polite request and then having it ignored multiple times. And I understand that as someone who has asked for this and also has then not been the recipient of such courtesy, that you just don't want to feel pushy in that sort of situation. Demi said, "I constantly had to educate people and explain why I identified with those pronouns," the singer who came out as non-binary in 2021 explained in a recent interview. Both artists have said that it's okay to make genuine mistakes, especially when starting out with identifying someone in a different way than you have previously. But trying not to make an effort at all is just as hurtful as maliciously misgendering someone. Alright, Elliot Page, trans king, we stan. Stated when coming out as trans mask back in 2020 that the pronouns to use for Elliot are he/they. Great, cool, love that. People writing and talking about Elliot who are being respectful have often chosen to use he pronouns. I've seen people who tend to default to using he, him only, even in this screenshot of their coming out. And it's interesting to me that mostly I've seen people default to the binary terminology. It's not incorrect, I just find it a little bit boring and also a little bit telling about how people's minds work when trying to attribute gender to someone. And of course the struggle of being non-binary, especially for someone who is not a celebrity, is that it does leave people wondering the most inappropriately invasive questions. What are you? Sadly, I'm a member of the human race. I mean, what's your gender? Clearly, I am too fabulous for just one gender. But were you born a man or a woman? Like everyone, I was born a baby. What's in your pants, though? A surprising amount of metal. No, I'm not showing you. So, what conclusions can we come to? Discussions about pronouns are fine, but when someone is insistently refusing to accept somebody else's pronouns, it's usually just as a proxy in the culture war for talking about trans issues and trying to demean or diminish them. It's not always easy to use the correct pronouns for someone, especially when addressing someone with a new identity, but trying and learning, it goes a long way. Refusal to respect someone's pronouns is just a form of bigotry. Genuine mistakes do happen, of course, but there is a limit to how much someone can take. Pronouns, especially third-person singular gender-neutral pronouns, have been around since before the English language was even invented. And finally, it is easy, or at least it is easier than you might think, to simply respect trans people.
Alors, Guignou, vous êtes transgenre, vous étiez une fille et maintenant vous êtes un garçon. Êtes-vous heureux?
Oui, je suis très heureux.
Ah.
Oui, mais enfin tout de même, Jésus.
Oh, ta gueule. Voilà, c'était Flash Débat. À demain.
Anyway, I have to wrap things up now because the battery is on its last legs. So thank you for sticking around with me for this video. I'll see you all soon. Hope you had fun. Non-binary is valid. God damn it. The pinnacle of philosophical epistemological... Oh God, I knew I was going to trip up on that word. This is considered probably the pinnacle of philosophical epistemological... Fuck, I almost had it. People often put for more info, most often non-binary people most there's not many people that use thou in these. Let's do this as quickly as I can. Right. Yeah, baby. They may God, I can't even talk. A surprising amount of metal. Say that one again.